Adam Cianciarulo. No! 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 Why, racing gods? Why must you do this to us? Why must you take away one of our favorites? And I don't mean favorites just in the means of a favorite to win races, but a favorite as in the fans really like this guy. As the news breaks that Adam Cianciarulo is out of 2022 Monster Energy AMA Supercross with a knee injury that he suffered at round three. Round three? Look, the injury narrative has been there a bit for Adam, but I don't think we thought he'd be gone this quickly this year, which makes it even more of a bummer. Plus, I already said that word narrative, and we know that he knows that we know that he knows that the narrative is important to someone like this, who we know is a fan of the sport, who is very introspective, who can probably take that 50,000-foot view and see what this looks like from the outside looking in. I think some athletes can tune all that noise out and probably don't even realize what they're doing. But this is someone who we know has an understanding of legacy and narrative and storyline and all that. And that injury tag, well, it's not coming off. At least not soon. Because we won't even see him back to Lucas Oil Pro Motocross in May. And that is a bummer in so many ways. Mostly because Cianciarulo is liked so much, but also because this is the kind of thing that puts a damper on the beginning of the season when we come in with a hashtag deep field and the 12 riders can win. I mean, this bums you out more than hearing someone on video saying, as great as the season looks, you're only going to get 5, maybe 6 winners. Yes, some guy put out a video saying that that's kind of a bummer. There's a guy that's out there saying, round 3 really sets a tone for a series that goes super deep, 17 rounds. Yeah, this is an even bigger bummer than that. I'm going to encourage you now to skip ahead in the video to get ahead of the amateur part so you don't have to hear it if you don't want. So here we go. Go about 2.5 minutes further into this video because I'm going to clip this part and put it at the beginning of the amateur part, and then we'll meet at the end of the amateur part if you just want to skip it. Now, Cianciarulo's road has been pretty winding, but the wind is just one turn. It's gone 180, because, of course, he was defined by his amateur days when he was dominant. And you might not even want to hear about these amateur days. Maybe you've skipped this part of the video already. But it is, unfortunately, part of that narrative that he probably doesn't want to hear about. And it's not even really his fault. All he did was win. He wasn't asking to hype it up. But look, we go with very rudimentary information when you're trying to predict the future of the sport, such as watching videos where a guy says only 5 or 6 riders are going to win, and round 3 is the most important in the series. Yes, very rudimentary information when you're trying to predict the future. And it was too easy when people said, well, who's the next big thing, to just say, well, let's see. We had Ricky Carmichael and James Stewart. They won. As the industry would say, they were the fastest 65 rider, the fastest 85 rider, the fastest 125 amateur, went to the pros, became the fastest 125 pro, the fastest 250 pro. That looked like the most logical way and the simplest, smoothest system. Now, little did we know that they were actually exception to the rule, and as much sense as that makes to just simply be the best rider at every level you'll ever race, that actually basically never happens. They were the exceptions to the rule, and even they had to deal with this Australian named Chad Reed that we had never even heard of, who eventually was able to lock horns with them. But Cianciarulo was also a Team Green rider like them. He was also winning at every level like them, and he was also from Florida like them. So that made the connection a lot simpler, and I don't think Adam was asking for that. He was just doing what he was supposed to do, which is win. And then he was riding at Ryan Villopoto's place and being trained by Alden Baker when Villopoto, also a Team Green rider, moved to the pros and was winning everything in sight. So it just made it too obvious, too inevitable. The hype just adhered itself to him without him even reaching out and asking for that. And that led to some backlash, as it usually does. Some people called him Baby Jesus. Now, some people were definitely on board and thought the guy was awesome and they were pumped for him, but other people, probably because he was the overdog and not the underdog, wanted to see him lose. But it's turned completely, because unfortunately for Adam, the injuries have been there, and eventually he became a reclamation project. A, America loves a comeback, and B, he's just so darn likable, because we know he's like us. We know he's a fan of the sport, and we know he understands narratives and storylines and introspection. He's a funny guy, he's a nice guy. That's why he's one of the favorites, and not just a favorite to win races, but like a favorite from a fan perspective. And in fact, it even hurts me to bring the amateur thing up, because I know amateurs don't really, that stuff doesn't matter at the pro level, but it's just stuck to Adam, and I know he hates that, and I know that he wishes that people wouldn't even bring the amateur thing up. Plus, maybe you don't care about amateurs, or maybe you think that's boring, or maybe you're saying, I already know about the amateur thing. So I'm going to help you out. We meet again. after we wrapped up Adam Cianciarulo's amateur career, which you may or may not have listened to by the magic of editing. So Cianciarulo now, the injury now, let's talk about now and not the past. It leads to 3 topics that I've wanted to cover in these videos, these video logs, these vlogs, Weigandt. Do we have a name for these? Like and subscribe. Yeah, Cianciarulo now ties into 3 stories that I will cover more in depth in more videos later, but this is just too good, so I'm going to give you the abbreviated Cliff Notes version of it right here. First, it ties into people asking, oh man, what's going to happen? Is Kawasaki going to sign him next year? Surely they'd be done with him. They've already invested in him. It hasn't worked out. Is he going to get a ride in the future? And the answer is absolutely. Absolutely, positively, he's going to have a really good ride next year. I don't know what team it will be on, but it will be a top-level 450 factory team. Which leads me to a second topic here. Some think, well, he'll have a ride because he's very popular and the fans like him and he's got a cool vlog called Adam Uncut and he's popular on Instagram. No, that's not why. That's not why. I will have another video in the future to talk about how the top factory teams, they are not marketing efforts. They are race results generating efforts. They care about one thing, and that is winning races. So the reason Cianciarulo will for sure have a good ride on a good factory team next year is because, did you see the first couple laps of the first 2 races of the year this year? That's it. We can work with speed. Nasty, raw speed. If there's a rider on the market who can get a whole shot in a Supercross and put 5 bike lengths on the field in the first half of a lap of a race, sign him up. And if you're worried about injuries, they'll just say, we'll eventually get that fixed. Or if he comes over to our team, we will fix it. You just don't leave that kind of speed on the free agent market because there's really only 2 things that teams are looking for. It's either A, wins, or B, the potential for wins. Why does Ken Roczen continue to get a ride with Honda? It's not because he has 1.5 million Instagram followers. It's because Ken Roczen won a bunch of races last year and he's already won a race this year. Winning races pays the bills at the highest level. If you're a private team, a bubble, maybe we're going to make main events, maybe we're not team, they'll start looking towards the marketing and exposure angle. But at the top level, the goal is to win, and Cianciarulo has the speed to win. So do not worry, he will have a ride next year because teams want speed. The marketing, sometimes, honestly, I think they just think that gets in the way. So that's one topic. Another topic is this. While that's terrible news for Cianciarulo fans and for Monster Energy Kawasaki to lose him, oddly, look at who the fastest rider in the series, arguably the best rider in the series, has been so far. It's the other Kawasaki rider, Jason Anderson. Now, when Anderson moved over to the team, I heard people hitting me up saying, who's going to be the A rider and the B rider over there now that Tomac's out? Because Tomac was surely the A rider at Kawasaki, right? But Cianciarulo's been there a while. He's kind of their guy. He's got speed. So is he the A rider? Is Anderson the B rider? But Anderson does have a title, so does that make him the A rider? It doesn't matter who the A and B rider is because they don't have A and B riders. Again, I'll have a more in-depth video on this topic in the future. But the idea that teams elect or vote or decide on who their A or B rider is at that level, teams at that level, Monster Energy, Factory Kawasaki level, these folks that run these teams are smart and they know there's a lot of variables in racing and they know that winning is hard. So why would you not put your best foot forward with the 2 athletes you have and try to give them each the best chance of winning? And the reason you would do that is obvious, because someone is moments away from sticking his foot in the ground or catching it on the top of a whoop and hurting his knee and being out for the season. And when that happens, you'll be glad that you gave the other rider A-level treatment as well. Now, Kawasaki has even structured their team to make sure it works this way. Each rider has a crew chief and a mechanic, so no rider can say, hey, we have a crew chief, and I believe 70% of the time he's spending with that other rider. Now, this is human nature. It's impossible to pull this off to a completely and totally perfectly equal way. Maybe you could say one crew chief's better than the other, or one mechanic's better than the other. Riders operate totally different, right? Some riders need to be pushed, some riders need to be calmed down, some riders want a lot of attention, some riders want to be left alone. They're never going to treat each rider identically. But for certain, at the top level, Kawasaki just wants both of their riders to be as good as possible. They're not worried about deciding, do we want Anderson to beat Cianciarulo or Cianciarulo to beat Anderson? They're worried about beating Cooper Webb and Ken Roczen and Chase Sexton and Eli Tomac and Dylan Ferrandis. Put your best foot forward with your best two riders, and that's what Kawasaki has done. They gave Anderson and Cianciarulo their best chance. It did not work out for Cianciarulo this year, but man, is it working awesome with Anderson, who might be riding better than he ever has. And if you want more examples of the non-AB rider situation, look at Honda, who's won 2 of the first 3 races with 2 different riders. Is Roczen the A rider? Is Sexton the A rider? Yes. So this is a real bummer. We've lost one of the series favorites already, and we know what the narrative is. Unfortunately, Cianciarulo gets hurt a lot. And it brings me all the way back to the title of this video, the bad things happening to good people. And I think that's why this is an extra bummer. It's already a bummer because we've lost a contender. We've lost a rider that most people like. But also, we all want to believe that not only on the amateur scene do the likes of Carmichael and Stewart just keep on winning at a nice linear incline, but we also want to believe there's a nice, easy pathway. Try hard, have talent, work hard, do the right things, and you will be thusly rewarded. And when you see a situation like Cianciarulo's, you're seeing that not happen, and it's so frustrating, and then you want to solve that problem. But there aren't easy solutions. A couple of weeks ago, Mathis and I did a podcast with Brock Hepler on our Re-Raceables show. Look it up on iTunes or wherever you get your pods, Re-Raceables. Maybe you remember Brock Hepler, maybe you don't. The bummer about Brock Hepler is that he had talent and he worked hard. And he was right there in the mix with Villopoto, for example, Ryan Dungey, for example. And he got hurt, had a massive concussion, was never the same again. Now he's retired, and now I have videos where I say, do you remember, have you heard of Brock Hepler? That's a bummer. He tried to do everything right, didn't work out. That's a bummer. I think a lot of people equate when Cianciarulo gets hurt, man, he's like the Travis Pastrana of the sport these days. The personality, everyone's rooting for him, everyone loves him. Obviously, many things are not parallel. Cianciarulo got hurt going through whoops. Pastrana, unfortunately, just suffered a pelvis injury from trying to parachute off a building in Florida. No one is taking risks like Travis. Perhaps it was inevitable that the racing thing was going to not quite work out the way we had hoped, but it didn't make it feel any better when it didn't work out because people loved Pastrana. A, he was going to be another contender to win races, that hashtag deep field that we love, and B, we just love the guy. So when Cianciarulo gets hurt, it hurts extra because he has that Pastrana-like attention to him, and now in a good way, not just of the jealous type back in the amateur days. I'm probably going to have to cut a clip to say cut 15 seconds forward in the video so you don't have to hear about the amateur part again. But my point is this. This hurts because we want to believe that if you love this sport and you have talent and you work with the right people and you do all the right things that you will be rewarded for it. And this is proof that sometimes it just doesn't happen that way. Hepler or Pastrana, Trey Canard, great guy. Everybody loves Trey. Trey worked so hard that the folks around him had to try to back him down and have him work less. He should have been thusly and justly rewarded for it. It doesn't always happen. That's the real tragedy in sports. When you have a great player that you love on your team and he hurts his knee or he hurts his back or he hurts his shoulder and some sort of injury leads you to say, what might have been? But the good news for Cianciarulo, we've already seen the reclamation story. We've already seen him come from even worse depths than this and eventually win. Because remember, he is a champion in a very difficult series, 24 motos of Lucas Oil 250 Pro Motocross, and he did it holding off Dylan Ferrandis. And by the way, no one's been able to beat Ferrandis for an outdoor championship since. And also, because of the previous depths that Adam has gone to, he's come up with some coping mechanisms. Again, you feel bad for a rider who you know is introspective and understands the narrative that people like me are putting on videos right now. Sorry. But he does have methods to cope with that. And it's another thing that I'll get into more videos in the future. And that is when riders stop putting numbers on what they hope to achieve as far as results. And they go with the, I'm just trying to do my best. Cianciarulo has already learned that if you want to put numbers on the board and try to achieve them and just say, I have to do X, Y, and Z, the variables of racing are going to make that very difficult. The only thing you can really control is putting in your best effort. Because the racing gods are going to do great things and bad things, and sometimes it just feels like it's out of your control, and that gets so frustrating to watch, and I can't even imagine what it's like to live through it. And Cianciarulo already has. So that's why when you hear his interviews, he says, I'm just trying to do my best, or I'm just trying to execute. Don't put numbers on it. Don't say I have to win X amount of races, or even appear in X amount of races. And there's one other thing that you'll hear him say in his videos quite a bit. Look, a knee injury that takes you out of 5 months of Supercross is bad, but life can get a whole lot worse. He's still being paid to race dirt bikes, and I think he knows that as well. He's stated it in interviews. It's another coping mechanism. When your entire life is wrapped up around racing results and you're not able to get them, you have to tell yourself that there actually is more to life than racing results. So we shouldn't be as bummed as we probably felt when we first heard the news and you first turned on a video where a guy started it saying, Adam Cianciarulo, no!